Did you know that two of the greatest actors in Hollywood history shared their very last scene together in this movie, and neither of them told the crew it might be the final time they would ever work side by side? One of them was already very sick. One of them knew time was short. And yet, in front of the camera, they gave everything they had, one last time. That is the kind of magic hiding inside this movie. Let's dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Number 20. A movie that almost never got made. Let's start at the very beginning. Before this movie ever reached a single screen, it almost disappeared completely. The year was 1966. Hollywood was changing fast. Civil rights protests were happening in the streets. Cities were filled with marches, songs, and signs. People were fighting hard for equality. And in the middle of all this, a screenwriter named William Rose sat down and thought, what if two people from very different backgrounds fell in love and then had to face both? Their families at dinner? That simple question became the seed of one of the most important films ever made. But the studios were nervous. Very nervous. Love between a black man and a white woman was still illegal in 17 American states when this film went into production. That's right, 17 whole states had laws against it. Some studio executives thought the movie would cause outrage. Others feared no one would buy a ticket. They whispered that it was too dangerous, too political, too ahead of its time. One studio reportedly walked away from the project entirely. The filmmakers were told, quietly and firmly, that America was not ready. But director Stanley Kramer disagreed. He had made brave films before. He had tackled war, racism, and the Holocaust in his work. He believed that a movie could move people in ways that speeches never could. He pushed forward. He fought for the script. And slowly, piece by piece, he assembled the ingredients for what would become one of the most watched films of its era. Most people sitting in theaters on opening day had no idea how close the movie had come to never existing at all. What felt like a smooth, confident story almost stayed locked inside someone's notebook forever. Number 19. Sidney Poitier carried the weight of a nation. When Sidney Poitier was cast in the role of Dr. John Prentice, he understood something very clearly. This was not just a movie role. This was a responsibility. In 1967, Sidney was the biggest black movie star in America. He had already won an Oscar for Lilies of the Field. Audiences loved him. But with that love came enormous pressure. Every choice he made on screen was being watched, not just by film critics, but by an entire community of people who had very few faces like his to look up to in the movies. Sidney later said in interviews that he thought carefully about every single role he accepted in those years. He did not want to play characters who were weak, embarrassing, or stereotypical. He wanted to show dignity. He wanted black audiences to see themselves as doctors, as heroes, as men of intelligence and honor. And Dr. John Prentice, a brilliant, accomplished physician who falls in love and handles enormous social pressure with grace, was exactly that kind of character. But Sidney also knew the risks. He knew that some people would resent seeing him play a man who falls in love with a white woman. He received threats. He received letters filled with hatred. And still, he walked onto the set every morning, ready to work. The role required warmth, intelligence, and quiet courage. Sidney brought all three. What looked effortless on screen took enormous strength behind the camera, not just acting, but a kind of personal bravery that most audiences never fully understood. Number 18. Spencer Tracy was dying during filming. This is the fact that makes the whole movie feel different once you know it. Spencer Tracy, one of the most celebrated actors in Hollywood history, was already very ill when filming began. He had serious heart and lung problems. His health had been failing for years. His doctors warned him not to take on such a demanding project. His friends were worried. His body was weak. And yet, Spencer Tracy showed up on set every single day and gave a performance that would make audiences cry for decades to come. The producers were so concerned about his health that they took out a special insurance policy before filming started. But here's the heartbreaking part. The insurance company refused to cover Spencer Tracy personally because the risk was considered too great. Director Stanley Kramer and actress Katharine Hepburn both agreed to give up their own salaries to help cover the costs. They believed in Spencer. They believed in the movie. And they would not let fear stop them from telling this story. Spencer Tracy finished filming just 17 days before he passed away. 17 days. The final scene he filmed in this movie, a long, beautiful speech about love, was one of the last things he ever recorded on camera. When Katharine Hepburn watched the finished movie after his death, she reportedly broke down in tears because she saw not just a character on screen, but the man she had loved. For so many years, what looked like a role was also a goodbye. Number 17. Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, A Secret Love Story. Here is something most people sitting in those movie theaters did not fully understand. Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy were not just co-stars. They had been in a private, long-term romantic relationship for over 25 years. They had met on the set of Woman of the Year back in 1942. And from that first film together, something between them never ended. But their love story was complicated, because Spencer Tracy was still legally married to someone else. In the 1940s and 50s, this kind of situation was deeply private. Hollywood kept many secrets. Katharine and Spencer never walked red carpets together as a couple. They never announced their love in public. They lived separate lives on the outside but were deeply connected in private. Over the years, they made 8 movies together. Each film added another chapter to a relationship that audiences could feel but never fully see. When they made Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, it was their 9th and final collaboration. And on screen, they played a married couple who must decide how much they truly believe in love. Real love. Brave love. Love that goes beyond comfort and safety. Many film historians believe that what you see between them in the final scenes of this movie is not entirely acting. It is something more honest than that. 2 people at the end of a long journey saying things to each other that perhaps they could never say off-screen. Love hidden in plain sight for 25 years. Number 16. The script was written in just 6 weeks. William Rose was the writer behind the screenplay for this film. He was a British writer who had already won an Oscar for It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. When the idea came to him, he sat down and wrote fast. Very fast. The full screenplay was completed in approximately 6 weeks. For a Hollywood film dealing with such a complex social topic, that speed was remarkable. Most scripts take months, sometimes years to develop. 6 weeks felt almost impossible. But William Rose said the story poured out of him because it felt urgent. He felt the world needed it immediately. He wanted to capture a very specific kind of dinner table tension. The kind where polite people say careful things, but underneath those careful words, an enormous emotional storm is brewing. Every character in his script had real fears. Every character had reasons to resist the love story at the center of the film. And every character, by the end, had to make a choice. Rose reportedly based parts of the story on real conversations he had witnessed. Moments where people claimed to believe in equality in the abstract, but then found that equality much more complicated when it sat down at their dinner table and asked to join the family. That gap between what people say they believe and what they actually feel when tested, that gap is what this whole movie lives inside. 6 weeks to write it. And it has lasted nearly 60 years since. Number 15. Filming was done in just 36 days. For a movie that would go on to earn 10 Academy Award nominations, the production schedule was astonishingly short. The entire film was shot in approximately 36 days. That is barely over a month of actual filming for a movie that tackles one of the most sensitive social conversations of its era. The reason for the rushed pace was not just budget, it was Spencer Tracy's health. Every day of filming was a gift. Every scene had to be captured efficiently, because no one could predict how much time remained. Stanley Kramer ran a tight, respectful set. He knew his cast was carrying enormous emotional weight. He did not push for endless retakes or complicated technical setups. He trusted his actors. He trusted Katharine Hepburn, Sidney Poitier, and the rest of the ensemble to bring the truth of each scene without needing to repeat it 20 times. That trust created something unusual, a film that feels spontaneous and honest even though every line was carefully written in advance. Crew members who worked on the production later described the atmosphere as quiet and serious. People moved carefully. They spoke softly. Everyone understood that something important was happening, and they understood that for at least one of the people in front of the camera, this project was not just another job. 36 days. Every one of them counted. What looked easy on screen came from a set where every minute felt precious. Number 14. The movie challenged 17 state laws. When this film was released in December of 1967, something extraordinary had just happened in American law. Earlier that same year, in June of 1967, the United States Supreme Court issued a landmark ruling in a case called Loving v. Virginia. That ruling struck down all laws banning interracial marriage across the entire country. Just months before the movie reached theaters, those 17 state laws, the ones that made the love story in this film technically illegal in a huge portion of America, had been wiped away. The timing felt almost magical. The filmmakers had not planned this. They had been working on the movie for over a year, unaware of exactly when the Supreme Court would act. But when the ruling came, and then the movie arrived just months later, many people saw it as a sign. A legal door had opened, and this film walked right through it. Audiences who might have been nervous or uncomfortable could now watch the story without the law standing between them and the emotion of it. Still, changing a law does not change a culture overnight. Many people in the audience that December still held very traditional views about race and marriage. The movie did not preach at them. It did not shout or lecture. Instead, it invited them to sit at a dinner table with people they might normally never encounter, and it asked them to feel something. That quiet invitation turned out to be far more powerful than any political speech could have been. Love won in court. Then it won on screen. Number 13. Katherine Houghton was Katharine Hepburn's real niece. The young actress who played Joanna Drayton, the daughter at the center of the film's love story, was Katherine Houghton. And here is a delightful family secret hiding right on screen. Katherine Houghton was the real niece of Katharine Hepburn. That's right, aunt and niece, playing mother and daughter in one of the year's biggest films. Their chemistry was completely natural, because in many ways, it was. Katharine Hepburn had quietly recommended her niece for the role. Young Katharine had some acting experience, but was not yet a major Hollywood name. Getting cast opposite Spencer Tracy and Sidney Poitier, and alongside her famous aunt, was both an enormous opportunity and an enormous amount of pressure. She had to hold her own in scenes with 3 legendary performers around her. Film critics at the time gave her mixed reviews. Some felt her performance was a little too bright and breezy for the weight of the subject. Others felt that her lightness was exactly right for the character. Joanna is meant to be someone who cannot fully understand why love should be complicated by race. Her innocence, her cheerfulness, her slightly naive energy, all of that came naturally to a young woman stepping into her first major film. Real family. Playing family. The connection you feel in their scenes together was not entirely manufactured by the cameras. Number 12. Sidney Poitier made 3 major films in one single year. 1967 was the year that Sidney Poitier became something no one had ever quite been before, in American film. That single calendar year, he appeared in 3 major important movies that all dealt with race in American society. The first was To Sir, with Love, where he played a teacher in London, inspiring students who had almost given up on themselves. The second was In the Heat of the Night, where he played a sharp, dignified detective facing racism in the American South. And the third was this film. 3 films. 1 year. All 3 were enormous hits. All 3 featured Sidney in roles that were intelligent, strong, and morally serious. By the end of 1967, Sidney Poitier was the #1 box office draw in all of Hollywood. Not just among black actors, among all actors. He was bigger than any other star that year. That achievement, in the middle of the civil rights movement during a period of real social violence and unrest, was staggering. Some critics later argued that Sidney's roles in this era were too perfect, too saintly, too spotless. Dr. John Prentice in this film, for example, is not just a good man. He is a remarkable physician with an extraordinary career, impeccable manners, and endless patience. Some felt this was the only way black characters could be made acceptable to white mainstream audiences at the time. Sidney himself acknowledged this tension in later interviews, but he also understood that visibility, even carefully curated visibility, was better than invisibility. 1 year. 3 films. An entire era changed. Number 11. The famous ice cream scene was completely improvised. There is a wonderful moment early in the film where Sidney Poitier's character sits in a car at a drive-in and orders an ice cream cone. It is a small, playful moment in the middle of a very serious story. And here's what makes it special. Parts of that scene were not scripted. The casual ease of it, the light humor, the natural way Sidney interacted with the environment around him, some of that came from improvisation on the day of filming. Sidney Poitier was known for his careful preparation. He studied scripts thoroughly, understood his characters deeply, and came to set fully ready. But he also had a gift for finding human, natural moments within a scene that the written words alone could not fully capture. Director Stanley Kramer encouraged this. He wanted the film to feel lived in and real, not like a polished stage play. He wanted the audience to forget, at moments, that they were watching actors. The ice cream scene worked because it showed Dr. Prentice as a regular human being, someone who enjoys small pleasures, who has a casual side, who is not carrying the weight of social significance in every single moment. This was important. The film needed to show that love between these 2 people existed in ordinary life, not just in dramatic confrontations. Sometimes, love is just 2 people sharing an ice cream. What felt like a small throwaway moment ended up being one of the most remembered parts of the film, not acting so much as just being. Number 10. The movie earned 10 Oscar nominations. When the Academy Award nominations were announced in February of 1968, the film had earned 10 nominations. 10. That included Best Picture, Best Director for Stanley Kramer, Best Actor for Spencer Tracy, Best Actress for Katharine Hepburn, and Best Supporting Actor for Cecil Kellaway. William Rose received a nomination for his original screenplay. The film's music, editing, and art direction were also recognized. Katharine Hepburn won the Oscar for Best Actress that year, her second win, and the one that she has always said carried the most personal weight because Spencer Tracy was not. Alive to share the moment, she did not attend the ceremony. Some have said she could not bring herself to walk onto that stage without him beside her. She accepted the award privately, and the emotion of that evening, the joy mixed with grief, has become one of Hollywood's most quietly heartbreaking stories. William Rose also won for his screenplay, and when he stood at the podium to accept his award, he said simply that he hoped the movie had started some conversations that needed to happen. He was right. In living rooms, in restaurants, in barbershops, and beauty salons across America, people were talking about this film, about love, about fear, about what it means to really believe the things you say you believe. 10 nominations, 2 wins, and a conversation that has never really ended. Number 9. The dinner party was never supposed to be the whole movie. When William Rose first pitched the concept for this film, the story was envisioned as something a little more sprawling. There were ideas about following the couple across multiple settings, perhaps visiting different family members, exploring different communities, showing the relationship, develop over a longer period of time. But as the screenplay came together, something became clear. The best version of this story did not need all of that. The best version happened at one dinner table, in one afternoon, in one house. The decision to compress the entire story into approximately 24 hours of film time, with most of the action taking place in a single afternoon and evening, was a bold, creative choice. It gave the film an almost theatrical quality. Audiences feel the pressure of the clock ticking. Every conversation, every revelation, every confrontation must happen before the young couple boards a plane the next morning. That deadline creates real urgency. Stanley Kramer later compared the structure to a pressure cooker. Everything that different characters have been feeling for years about race, marriage, family, and identity gets forced into one small space in one short period of time. And the heat of that pressure brings out the truth in everyone. Not comfortable truth. Not polite truth. Real truth. The confined setting was not a budget decision. It was a storytelling decision, and it made the film feel like something that could not be escaped, just like the conversation itself. Number 8. Spencer Tracy's final monologue took multiple days to film. Near the end of the film, Spencer Tracy's character, Matt Drayton, delivers a long, beautiful speech about love. It is the emotional heart of the entire movie. He talks about what love really means. He talks about memory and courage and the difference between saying you believe something and actually proving it when the moment comes. It is one of the finest pieces of screen acting of the entire 1960s, and it almost broke everyone on set to film it. Spencer Tracy's health was so fragile by that point that filming the monologue required multiple sessions spread across more than one day. He could not always sustain the physical and emotional effort of such a long, demanding piece for extended periods. The crew was patient. Stanley Kramer was gentle, and the other actors who were present, Katharine Hepburn especially, held themselves very still and very quiet, giving Spencer everything he needed to find the scene. There are accounts from crew members who said that after certain takes, Katharine Hepburn would turn away from the camera so no one could see her face. Not because she was unhappy with the work, but because she was overwhelmed by it. By watching this man she loved pour everything remaining in him into these words. Spencer Tracy finished that monologue. He finished the whole film. And then, 17 days later, he was gone. The speech has never stopped being beautiful, but knowing the story behind it makes it feel like something more than a performance. It sounds like the truth. Number 7. The film was made for a remarkably small budget. For a film with this level of star power, Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, and Sidney Poitier all on the same screen, the budget was surprisingly modest. The total production budget was approximately $4 million. In the context of major Hollywood productions of that era, this was not a large amount. Some studio action films of the same period cost 2 or 3 times as much. But the filmmakers worked within their means and used every dollar carefully. The confined setting helped keep costs down. Filming mostly in a single house, with a relatively small cast, meant there were no expensive location shoots, no massive crowd scenes, no elaborate special effects. The entire film lives and breathes through its characters and their words. And because of that focus, the emotion is never diluted by spectacle. There is nowhere to hide. Every scene depends entirely on the actors being real. The film went on to earn approximately $56 million at the box office. On a $4 million investment, that return was extraordinary. Columbia Pictures, which distributed the film, called it one of the most financially successful films in the studio's history up to that point. Small budget, giant heart, and the kind of return on investment that no spreadsheet could have predicted when the nervous studio executives were debating whether America was ready. America, it turned out, was not just ready, it was hungry for this story. Number 6. The housekeeper character sparked real debate. One of the most talked about supporting characters in the film is Tilly, the Drayton family housekeeper played by Isabel Sanford, who years later would become famous as Wheezy on The Jeffersons. Tilly is a black woman who has worked for the Drayton family for many years. And here is the twist that surprised audiences. Tilly is deeply suspicious of Dr. John Prentice. She doesn't trust him. She worries that he will disrupt the comfortable life she knows. This character created real debate among audiences and critics. Some viewers felt that Tilly represented an important complexity, showing that not all black Americans automatically supported interracial relationships, and that different. People within the same community could have very different responses to social change. Others felt that the character reinforced an uncomfortable stereotype, the loyal servant more concerned with protecting her white employers than with her own communities. Interests. Isabel Sanford played Tilly with real humanity and humor. She didn't make the character a villain. She made her a woman with her own fears and her own logic. And Sidney Poitier's scenes with her, where Tilly makes clear she doesn't think he's good enough or worthy of disrupting things, have a sharp, funny energy unlike anything else in the film. What looked like a supporting role turned out to be one of the most debated and discussed elements of the movie for years afterward. Simple characters rarely are. Number 5. The movie was banned in several countries. While American audiences were lining up around the block to buy tickets, several other countries refused to screen the film at all. South Africa, which was living under the strict racial segregation system known as apartheid, banned the film entirely. The idea of a love story between people of different races, presented sympathetically, romantically, as something beautiful and worth fighting for, was considered deeply threatening to the government's entire social system. Other countries imposed cuts or restrictions. Some cinemas in certain regions refused to carry the film without significant edits to the more emotionally charged scenes. Even in parts of the United States, the film faced a complicated reception. Some theaters in the Deep South reportedly screened the film to quiet, tense audiences who had very different reactions from the enthusiastic crowds in New York or Los Angeles. The film meant different things in different rooms. But in every country where it was allowed to screen, something happened. Conversations started. Families argued. People who had never questioned their assumptions found themselves sitting very uncomfortably in dark theaters, realizing that the film was describing something they recognized inside themselves. Art has a way of sneaking past defenses that arguments cannot. A ban can stop a movie from entering a building. It cannot stop the idea inside it from traveling anyway. Some stories find their audience no matter what stands in the way. Number 4. Stanley Kramer hired a sensitivity advisor before it was common. Long before Hollywood studios began routinely hiring cultural consultants and sensitivity readers for major productions, Stanley Kramer did something unusual for 1967. He sought out the advice of community leaders, civil rights figures, and people who were living the realities that his film was trying to portray. He did not want to make a movie about black and white Americans that neither black nor white Americans would recognize as true. He had conversations with figures from the civil rights movement. He listened to concerns about how the black characters were being portrayed. He asked whether the idealized perfection of Dr. John Prentice felt real or felt like a fantasy designed to make white audiences comfortable. He took those conversations seriously and incorporated some of the feedback into the final production. Not all of the critics were satisfied. Some felt the film still played it too safe, still made its black protagonist too exceptional, too unthreatening. But the effort was real. For a white, Jewish director working in a studio system dominated by people with very limited perspectives on race, this kind of consultation was genuinely unusual. Kramer understood that he had blind spots. He understood that good intentions were not enough, that you needed to actively seek out the perspectives you were missing. It wasn't perfect. No film tackling these subjects ever is. But the attempt to listen before speaking was, in itself, a kind of quiet courage. Good intentions alone don't make good art. Listening does. Number 3. Katharine Hepburn did not watch the final cut until after Spencer died. The film was completed and ready for distribution in late 1967. Katharine Hepburn had been present for nearly every day of filming. She knew the story. She had lived the scenes, and yet she chose not to watch the completed, edited version of the film until after Spencer Tracy had passed away. There are different accounts of exactly why. Some say she was too emotional. Some say she wanted to experience the finished film privately, without the distraction of premiere events or press. What is documented is what happened when she finally did see the finished film. She reportedly sat in a private screening room, alone or with only a small group of trusted friends, and watched the story unfold. And when Spencer Tracy appeared on screen in his final monologue, when she heard his voice delivering those words about love and saw his face, older and tired, but still enormously alive, she wept completely. Not politely, not quietly. She let herself feel all of it. Later, in her memoir and in various interviews over the years, Katharine Hepburn said that this film was the most important thing she had ever made. Not because it was the best technically, not because of the awards, but because it held something she could never get back. It held Spencer speaking about love, alive on film, preserved forever. Every time the movie played, he was there. Every time someone pressed play, he came back. She called it a gift she did not fully understand until it was all she had left of him. Cinema as memory. Memory as love. Number 2. The film changed the way Hollywood discussed race. Before Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, Hollywood had touched on racial subjects in film, but usually carefully, usually with tragedy, usually with distance. The black character suffered. The lesson was learned. The credits rolled. This film did something different. It put the subject of race inside a domestic space, inside a family home, inside a relationship between people who all claimed to have good values, and it showed how complicated those good values could become when tested by real life. The impact on what came after was enormous. Other studios, seeing the film's extraordinary box office performance, understood something they had doubted before. Audiences across racial lines would show up for honest, emotionally real stories about race in America. The success of this film helped open doors for other films exploring similar territory in the years that followed. In the Heat of the Night, which Sidney Poitier also starred in that same year, swept the Oscars the following spring, reinforcing the message. Film scholars have written extensively about the before and after of 1967 in Hollywood. Before this period, the industry treated race as a niche subject, relevant only to certain audiences. After this year, after this film, that assumption was gone. A movie about race, about love, about a family dinner became the biggest film of its year. That fact rewrote the rules of what was possible and what was necessary in American cinema. One film. One dinner table. One conversation that changed an entire industry's imagination. Number 1. The kiss seen around the world. And here we are. Number 1. The most controversial, most discussed, most studied detail in the entire film, and it lasts less than 2 seconds on screen. Early in the movie, as Joanna and John are being driven through San Francisco, the camera briefly captures a kiss between them. It is not a dramatic, extended romantic moment. It is quick, casual. The kind of kiss that says, these two people are in love, and it is ordinary and real for them. But for 1967, it was anything but ordinary. A kiss between a black man and a white woman seen on American movie screens in a major studio film that had essentially never happened before on this scale. Director Stanley Kramer was aware of exactly what he was doing. He knew the image would be powerful. He knew it would disturb some viewers and move others. He knew that the camera could not lie and that what the camera showed, two people kissing, in love, would carry its own argument without any words needing to be spoken. The scene was filmed quickly. There was no long discussion of it on set. No special preparation. Sidney Poitier and Katharine Houghton simply played the moment as it was written, but across the country, that image landed differently in different theaters. Some audiences gasped, some grew still, some were moved, and some, in some parts of the country, walked out. But most stayed. Most kept watching. And by the time Spencer Tracy's final speech arrived, most of them had been changed, just slightly, in some quiet corner of their thinking. A kiss. 2 seconds, a moment that movie history has never forgotten. Not acting, just two people, and a camera, and a truth that the whole world needed to see. Bonus fact, the secret behind the final speech. Here is one last hidden story. Something even devoted fans of the film rarely know. When Spencer Tracy filmed his long final monologue about love, director Stanley Kramer made a quiet, private decision. He told the crew to keep the camera rolling even between takes. Even when Spencer paused, or looked away, or breathed heavily, or simply stood still for a moment, the camera kept going. Kramer later said that he wanted to capture everything, not just the polished, scripted performance, but the real man in between the lines. Some of what was captured in those quiet between moments has never been publicly released. But those who saw the raw footage described it as deeply moving. Spencer Tracy, clearly exhausted, but clearly present, clearly conscious of exactly what he was doing and why it mattered. Between takes, he reportedly did not break character entirely. He stayed inside something. Some version of the man he was playing, or some version of himself, or perhaps some mixture of both that only he could fully understand. Katharine Hepburn also kept her composure between takes by doing something very specific. She looked at the script in her hands, not at Spencer. She told friends later that if she had looked at him, really looked at him, she would not have been able to continue. So she kept her eyes down. She waited for the director's call. And then she looked up, and she was there, fully present, giving everything. Between the takes, she protected herself. Inside the takes, she gave herself away completely. That is what great acting looks like from the outside. From the inside, it is something else entirely. One small private strategy, eyes on the page, held the whole film together. Old love. New camera. And a truth that outlasted them both. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner is not just a movie about race. It is a movie about courage. It is about the gap between the values we claim to hold and the courage it takes to actually live by them. It is about love, the kind that does not ask for permission, and the kind that survives long after the person who carried it is gone. Spencer Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, Sidney Poitier, and everyone who poured themselves into this film left something behind that keeps growing, year after year, viewer after viewer. Every single person who watches this film today is watching a love letter. A letter from a dying man to the woman he loved. A letter from filmmakers to an America they believed could be better. A letter from a story to the future, to you, watching now, in a world still figuring out how to be brave. If you enjoyed these stories, subscribe for more. Every movie hides a truth, and we will keep uncovering them, one story at a time.